The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the manicured lawns of Crestwood Estates, where every house looked like a postcard and every neighbor pretended to live in harmony. But beneath the polished surface, tension simmered like a hidden volcano ready to erupt. Sarah's heart pounded as she walked briskly down the sidewalk, her cane tapping steadily before her. Despite her blindness, she navigated the familiar route with practiced ease, trusting the sounds and scents of the neighborhood to guide her. Her sister Emily followed closely behind, her face tight with worry. They were on their way to the HOA meeting, a gathering that had grown increasingly hostile over the past months, especially since Karen moved in. Karen, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, ruled the HOA board like a tyrant, often targeting anyone who dared oppose her. Sarah had been blind since childhood, but Karen didn't care. Today's confrontation was the worst yet. It started as a heated exchange near the community garden, where Sarah's cane had accidentally brushed against Karen's pristine flower beds. Karen's voice sliced through the afternoon air like a knife. "Watch where you're going!" Karen snapped, her lips curling in a sneer. "I'm sorry, Karen. I didn't mean to," Emily began, stepping between them protectively. But Karen wasn't listening. "You and your sister are always causing trouble. Maybe you belong somewhere else." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Please don't speak to my sister that way," Emily said, her voice firm but controlled. Suddenly, Karen lunged forward with surprising force. In a heartbeat, she shoved Sarah, blind, vulnerable, directly into a thick thorn bush that lined the edge of the garden. Sarah cried out as sharp thorns tore at her arms and face, her white cane clattering to the ground. Neighbors gasped, frozen in shock. Emily rushed to her sister's side, brushing away the scratches and tears. "Are you okay?" she whispered, fear and fury battling in her eyes. Sarah's voice trembled. I didn't see it coming." Karen's eyes burned with cruel satisfaction. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before invading my space." The crowd was silent, caught between outrage and fear of Karen's wrath. Emily's jaw clenched. "This is not over." As they retreated to the safety of their home, Sarah's mind raced. This attack was more than a random act of cruelty. It was a declaration of war. Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor, she was dangerous, and the HOA had become her weapon. That night, Sarah lay awake, the stinging scratches on her arms a painful reminder of how vulnerable they were. But beneath the pain, a fierce determination burned. If Karen thought she could intimidate them into silence, she was wrong. Sarah's sister may be blind, but they would see this fight through with eyes wide open. The next day, Sarah began to plan. She would learn everything about the HOA's inner workings, find allies, and prepare to take back their community. Karen had started a battle she never intended to win, and Sarah was ready to fight by any means necessary. The morning after the attack, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, fingers trembling slightly as she sipped her coffee. The scratches on her arms had begun to sting more fiercely, a burning reminder of Karen's cruelty. But the pain was nothing compared to the growing fire inside her. She knew this fight would require more than anger. It would require strategy. Her laptop sat open in front of her, the screen displaying the HOA's official website and contact list. Sarah wasn't just any homeowner. She had a background in cybersecurity and intelligence from years before her vision loss. Now she would put those skills to use in ways Karen couldn't imagine. With a deep breath, Sarah began searching for anything that could expose the HOA's inner workings. Meeting minutes, emails, financial records, anything left unguarded. At first, the files seemed mundane, discussions about landscaping contracts, pool maintenance schedules, standard complaints, about noise or parking. But as Sarah dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Emails marked confidential, references to special arrangements, and vague mentions of disciplinary actions that never seemed to reach homeowners. Her heart quickened. One late-night search led her to a hidden folder buried within the HOA's digital archives. Accessing it required bypassing several firewalls, but Sarah's fingers danced over the keyboard with practiced ease. Inside, she found disturbing evidence: emails between Karen and the HOA president discussing hush money paid to quiet dissenting neighbors, threats issued to those who tried to challenge the board, and deliberate cover-ups of Karen's aggressive behavior. One email from Karen read, "Ensure the Johnson complaint is dropped. They're too troublesome." Another hinted at secret surveillance on specific homeowners. Sarah leaned back, stunned but not surprised. The HOA wasn't just corrupt. It was a tightly controlled operation designed to protect Karen and her allies at any cost. She realized that Karen's shove into the thorn bush was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger campaign of intimidation. And worse, the HOA leadership wasn't just turning a blind eye, they were actively enabling it. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on Sarah, but it also steeled her resolve. She couldn't fight this battle alone. She needed allies, people who had suffered under Karen's reign but were too afraid to speak out. Over the next few days, Sarah reached out quietly to her neighbors, starting with those who had expressed frustration but never voiced it publicly. At first, they were hesitant, fearful of retaliation, but when Sarah showed snippets of the evidence she'd uncovered, their walls began to crumble. Margaret, an elderly widow whose garden had been repeatedly destroyed by HOA mandates, admitted Karen had threatened her with fines when she complained. Tom, a young father, confessed he was considering selling his house just to escape the toxic atmosphere. With each story, Sarah felt the momentum shift. The neighborhood wasn't as united behind Karen as it appeared on the surface, but lurking behind this rising tide of dissent was a growing danger. Sarah could feel eyes watching her. Late-night knocks on doors, whispered warnings from unknown neighbors, even subtle sabotages to her home. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. One evening, as Sarah sat reviewing the files, her phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Stop digging, or things will get worse." Her hands tightened around the phone. The threat was clear, but it only strengthened her determination. This wasn't just about scratches and bruises anymore. It was about exposing a dangerous network of power that threatened everyone's peace and safety. Sarah knew the path ahead was risky, but for her blind sister, for every neighbor afraid to speak, she had no choice but to keep going. Because in Crestwood Estates, secrets were buried deep, but Sarah was about to bring them into the light. The sun dipped low over Crestwood Estates as Sarah made her way to the quiet corner cafe where she had arranged to meet someone she never thought she'd trust. Karen's estranged brother, Michael. Michael wasn't like his sister. Where Karen was cold and ruthless, Michael carried a haunted look, as if the weight of family secrets pressed constantly on his shoulders. Rumor had it they hadn't spoken in years, fractured by a bitter dispute no one in the neighborhood knew the details of. But Sarah needed someone on the inside, someone who knew Karen's moves, her weaknesses, and most importantly, the truth behind the carefully polished facade she showed the HOA. As Sarah entered the cafe, Michael looked up from his coffee, eyes narrowing in suspicion. "So you're the one stirring things up?" he said quietly, voice laced with both warning and curiosity. Sarah nodded. "I'm trying to stop her from hurting more people." "You know what she's capable of?" Michael's jaw clenched. "You have no idea." They spoke in hushed tones, careful to avoid curious ears. Michael revealed cracks in Karen's armor that no one else saw, her ruthless ambition, her manipulations, and the dangerous secrets she'd buried in the past. Secrets that could ruin not just the HOA, but their entire family reputation. "Done with her," Michael confessed. "But if I speak out, she'll destroy me. She always does." Sarah's mind raced. Could she really trust Michael? Aligning with him was risky. His family ties meant Karen could anticipate his moves. Yet, his insider knowledge could be the weapon they needed. "I'm not asking you to fight alone," Sarah said gently. "Together we can bring her down, but only if we trust each other." Michael hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, but if this goes sideways, I'm not coming to your rescue." The alliance was fragile, built on shared enemies rather than trust, but it was a start. Over the following days, Michael provided Sarah with invaluable information: hidden HOA contracts that revealed conflicts of interest, surveillance logs suggesting Karen had spies watching dissenters, and records of suspicious financial transactions. With this intel, Sarah began piecing together Karen's network of control, exposing the depths of the corruption that kept her in power. Yet every move Sarah and Michael made was shadowed by danger. Karen seemed to anticipate their actions, disrupting meetings, spreading rumors, and even enlisting neighbors to isolate Sarah. One evening, as Sarah walked home, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The windows were tinted, but the engine hummed quietly. She quickened her pace, heart thudding in her chest. Inside the house, she told Michael over the phone. "They're watching me." Michael's voice was grim. "She knows. We have to be careful." The paranoia settled like a cold fog over Sarah. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar car felt like a threat. But beneath the fear, something stronger grew: resolve. She wasn't just fighting for her sister anymore. She was fighting for every neighbor trapped under Karen's iron grip. And now, with Michael's help, the battle lines were drawn. But even as Sarah felt the tide turning, she couldn't shake one nagging doubt. Was Michael truly on her side, or was this dangerous alliance just another trap waiting to snap? As the night deepened, Sarah stared out her window, knowing the next move would be the most dangerous yet, because in this war of secrets and shadows, trust was the rarest and riskiest weapon of all. The next morning, Sarah stood at her kitchen window, the early sun casting a cold light on the quiet street. Her mind was a battlefield, every thought a calculated move. With Michael's insider intel in hand, she was no longer just reacting. She was planning a full-scale operation. Sarah's military training, once a distant memory from years past, now became her guide. She mapped out the HOA's network like a strategic war zone, identifying key players, vulnerabilities, and choke points. Every alliance, every whisper of corruption was a target. Her first move was subtle but deliberate. Anonymous flyers began appearing on doorsteps across Crestwood estates, each one carefully worded to expose Karen's abuses without naming names. The flyers hinted at corruption, intimidation, and secret deals that affected every homeowner's safety and property values. By the end of the day, whispers began spreading. Neighbors exchanged concerned glances, some curious, others afraid. The flyers had cracked the illusion of harmony, and Karen's iron grip was beginning to loosen. But Karen was quick to respond. That very evening, Sarah's phone rang. It was a distorted voice, cold and menacing. "Stop this now, or you'll regret it." Sarah's fingers clenched around the phone. Threats had become routine, but she refused to back down. Next, she organized secret meetings with the growing group of dissenters, neighbors who had suffered in silence but were now ready to stand together. They met in basements, coffee shops, anywhere safe from prying eyes and ears. At these gatherings, Sarah shared her evidence and plans, coaching her allies on how to speak up without fear, how to document abuses, and how to unite their voices. For the upcoming HOA elections, each meeting felt like a small victory, but Sarah knew Karen's retaliation would escalate, and it did. Within days, homeowners who attended the meetings found their mail tampered with, their yards vandalized, even anonymous letters hinting at personal secrets best left buried. Karen's tactics were ruthless and personal. Sarah's strategy, adapted. She set up secure communication channels using encrypted messages and code words. She assigned roles to her allies. Some gathered evidence, others spread information quietly, while a few served as lookouts for suspicious activity. The neighborhood was transforming into a covert battleground, a silent war fought in whispers and secret signs. At the same time, Sarah prepared for the most critical confrontation yet, the upcoming HOA board meeting. This was her chance to present undeniable proof of Karen's misconduct and force the community to choose sides. She rehearsed her speech meticulously, knowing Karen would attack her character and try to derail the meeting. Sarah's plan was to stay calm, use facts, and rally the homeowners to demand accountability. But even with the plan laid out, doubt crept in during the quiet moments. The stakes were higher than ever. If she failed, Karen would tighten her grip, and the neighborhood would descend further into fear and silence. One night, as Sarah reviewed the evidence files once more, a new email notification blinked on her screen. It was from an anonymous sender with a single line. "Meet me. I have something you need to see." The message sent a chill down her spine. Was this another trap, or an unexpected ally stepping out of the shadows? With no other options, Sarah prepared to take the risk, because in this war, hesitation could mean defeat, and she was far from willing to lose. The night before the HOA meeting, Sarah barely slept. Every detail of her presentation ran through her mind, rehearsed to perfection. She had gathered mountains of evidence, emails, financial records, witness testimonies, and was ready to lay Karen's corruption bare before the entire community. But as dawn broke, the tension in Crestwood Estates was palpable. Cars filled the community center's parking lot, neighbors whispering anxiously as they entered the room. Some avoided Sarah's gaze, afraid of the storm she was about to unleash. Others watched her with hopeful eyes, desperate for change. Inside the packed meeting hall, the HOA board sat at the front, their faces masks of polite indifference. Karen sat at the center, a smug smile playing on her lips, confident her reign was unshakable. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped to the podium. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of conviction. "I'm here to speak not just for myself, but for many of you who have felt silenced or intimidated. It's time to confront the truth about our HOA leadership." She clicked through slides revealing damning emails between Karen and the board, President, pictures of the Thornbush incident, and evidence of hush money paid to keep homeowners quiet. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some gasped, others exchanged nervous glances. Karen's smile faltered. Then, Sarah called forward Margaret and Tom, two neighbors who bravely shared their experiences of harassment and intimidation. Their voices shook, but their courage was undeniable. Karen rose, eyes blazing with fury. "This is nothing but lies and personal attacks," she spat. "Sarah's trying to ruin me because of a petty grudge. She's stirring division in our community." The room erupted into chaos. Supporters of Karen shouted back, accusing Sarah of fabricating evidence, spreading rumors. The board tried to restore order, but tension crackled like electricity. Sarah held firm, answering every accusation with facts, refusing to be baited into emotional outbursts. Then came the moment of truth, the board vote on whether to launch a formal investigation into Karen's conduct. Whispers filled the room as ballots were distributed. Hearts pounded. When the results were announced, the room fell silent. The vote was split, but a narrow majority favored the investigation. Karen's face twisted with rage, but Sarah's allies exchanged quiet smiles of relief. As the meeting adjourned, Karen approached Sarah, voice low and venomous. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." Sarah met her glare without flinching. "No, Karen, this is just the beginning." Outside, neighbors gathered around Sarah, thanking her for speaking out, their faces hopeful but wary. Yet, beneath the victory, a shadow lingered. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the fight had only just begun. and that Karen's next move would be more dangerous than anything they'd faced so far. The days following the board meeting were a whirlwind. The formal investigation into Karen's misconduct had shaken Crestwood Estates, and many neighbors began speaking more openly about their experiences. But amidst the growing hope, Sarah sensed a creeping shadow, something darker than Karen's: threats. One afternoon, while reviewing messages from her allies, Sarah noticed something odd. An encrypted message she had sent detailing a crucial piece of evidence had been leaked to Karen's camp within hours. Someone close was betraying them. The thought hit her like a punch. Someone in her trusted circle was feeding information to Karen, sabotaging their efforts from within. Sarah's mind raced through her list of allies. Who could it be? Who had access to their private communications and meetings? Suspicion gnawed at her every interaction. Determined to uncover the traitor, Sarah began discreetly testing her team. She sent out slightly varied versions of sensitive information to different members, watching carefully to see which version would surface back with Karen. Days passed, and the tension in the group became palpable. Whispers of paranoia crept in, friendships strained under the weight of distrust. Finally, the evidence pointed to one person: Maggie, a longtime homeowner who had appeared steadfast but now seemed unnervingly evasive. Sarah confronted her privately, her voice low but firm. "Maggie, I need to know the truth. Are you working with Karen?" Maggie's eyes flickered with guilt, and after a painful silence, she confessed. "I'm sorry, Sarah. Karen threatened my family. I didn't want to get involved, but I was scared." The betrayal cut deep, but Sarah understood the fear that had driven Maggie's actions. "I get it," Sarah said quietly. "But you have to choose. We're fighting for all of us. If Karen wins, no one is safe." Maggie nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I want to help, I promise." Sarah gave her a chance to redeem herself, but from that moment on, the group tightened security, switching to more secure communication methods, holding fewer in-person meetings, and vetting new allies carefully. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Every new face, every unknown voice raised questions. Trust had become the most precious and fragile commodity. Meanwhile, Karen's retaliation escalated. The harassment grew more personal. Sarah found her tires slashed, her mailbox filled with hateful notes. Michael's car was vandalized. Even Sarah's blind sister, Sarah, was followed on her daily walks, her cane knocked aside more than once. Yet Sarah refused to back down. "We're close," she told Michael one evening, her voice steady despite the fear. "Karen is weakening. The board's investigation is underway. We just need to hold on." Michael nodded grimly. "But if Karen suspects a mole in her own ranks, she'll get desperate." The stakes had never been higher. One night, as Sarah locked her front door, a shadow flickered at the edge of her porch light. Her breath caught. "Who's there?" she called out, heart hammering. No answer, just a faint rustle in the bushes. She knew Karen's war was far from over, and that betrayal had made the battlefield even more dangerous. But Sarah also knew this. Even in darkness, a spark could ignite a revolution, and she was ready to light the fire. The pressure in Crestwood Estates was suffocating. After Maggie's betrayal and her fragile return to the fold, Sarah felt like she was navigating a minefield. Every step was calculated, every word measured. But time was running out. The HOA investigation had begun, and Karen's desperation was growing more dangerous by the day. Sarah and Michael met late one evening at a secluded park bench, hidden beneath the shadow of towering oaks. The air was thick with tension as they reviewed the latest findings from the investigation and planned their next move. "We have enough now to present to the board and the community," Michael said quietly, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. Sarah nodded. "But Karen's not going to surrender. She's already threatened more neighbors and made veiled threats toward my sister. We need a plan to protect them." Michael hesitated. I know someone who might help, an old friend who specializes in security and surveillance. If we can catch Karen in the act of intimidation, we can end this for good. Sarah considered it. It was risky, but a live sting could turn the tide decisively. The following days were a blur of preparation. Sarah's team set up discreet cameras and listening devices around the neighborhood, especially near her sister's usual walking paths. They coordinated schedules, ensuring allies were nearby to intervene if needed. Then came the night that would change everything. Under the cover of darkness, a figure moved stealthily toward Sarah's sister's usual route, a man hired by Karen to scare her away. The cameras captured every moment. Sarah watched the live feed, heart pounding as the man reached out to grab her sister's cane, attempting to trip her. Suddenly, spotlights snapped on, neighbors emerged from hiding places, and the would-be attacker was caught red-handed. The next day, the footage was played at the HOA hearing, stunning the community into silence. Karen's supporters faltered, unable to deny the evidence before their eyes. The board had no choice but to act swiftly. Karen was removed from her position immediately, and the investigation expanded to include a full audit of the HOA's dealings. For a moment, victory felt within reach. But Sarah knew better. As she left the hearing room, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think this ends with Karen? Think again." Her blood ran cold. Someone else was pulling strings behind the scenes. Someone more dangerous and powerful than Karen. The real war was just beginning. Sarah looked toward the horizon, determination blazing in her eyes. She had exposed the tyrant. But to save her community and her sister, she would have to dig deeper, fight harder, and prepare for an enemy who hid in the shadows. Because in Crestwood Estates, power was a game of shadows and betrayal, and Sarah was ready to play. The ominous message lingered in Sarah's mind like a dark cloud. Whoever had sent it wasn't just threatening her. They were announcing a new chapter in this fight. A chapter that Sarah knew would test everything she had. But she refused to be intimidated. If anything, the warning fueled her resolve. Determined to uncover the hidden puppeteer, Sarah doubled down on her investigation. She and Michael combed through HOA financial records, surveillance footage, and neighborhood chatter, searching for a name, a face, anything to expose the true mastermind. Late one night, Michael's voice broke through the silence of Sarah's living room. "Look at this." He pointed to an encrypted bank transfer buried deep in the HOA's accounts. A large sum funneled to a shell company connected to a private security firm. Sarah's heart raced. The pieces started to fit together. Karen wasn't acting alone, Sarah whispered. Someone's been funding her intimidation tactics. With renewed urgency, they traced the money trail, eventually linking it to an influential real estate developer eyeing Crestwood Estates for a lucrative commercial project. The developer's fingerprints were all over the neighborhood's unrest, bribing HOA officials, silencing opposition, and orchestrating Karen's reign to drive residents away. Sarah felt a mix of fury and vindication. This was bigger than a neighborhood squabble. It was a corporate land grab disguised as HOA politics. Armed with concrete proof, Sarah rallied her allies once more. They presented their findings at a town hall meeting, broadcasting the revelations. Live on social media. The community erupted in outrage. Local authorities launched an official investigation into the developer and the corrupted HOA officials. Karen was arrested, her network dismantled piece by piece. But the victory was bittersweet. Sarah's sister, though healing from the attack, still struggled with the trauma. The neighborhood, scarred by fear and betrayal, faced a long road to recovery. Yet amidst the rubble, hope blossomed. New leadership was elected to the HOA, neighbors dedicated to transparency, fairness, and healing. Sarah stood at the center of it all, a quiet hero who had turned personal pain into a fight for justice. As she watched her sister garden in their yard, laughter returning to her home, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The battle had been long and dark, filled with shadows and secrets, but in the end, light had prevailed, and Crestwood Estates would never forget the woman who dared to fight back.